Chapter 4, Our Past Presentations by Jim Stovall. We are all products of the presentations we have made, as well as the presentations that have been made to us in our past. To a great extent, we succeed or fail based on our ability to make powerful and impactful presentations. Our presenting skills, or lack thereof, come greatly from our past and presentations that have been made to us. Our earliest presentations often come to us from our parents, other family members, or friends who surrounded us when we were young children. My earliest memories of presentations were those given to me by my parents and grandparents. Many of those powerful messages remain with me today. If you're not 10 minutes early, you're late. Be the best at whatever you choose to do. And always do what you said you would do are among the earliest messages that came to me from presentations that still impact me to this day. It is easy to take for granted the powerful positive messages we have received through presentations early in our lives until we encounter other people who faced verbal abuse and negative messages through presentations early in their lives. A powerful presentation is impactful whether it's the history-changing speech from Martin Luther King or the evil messages delivered in presentations from Adolf Hitler. As healthy, achieving, successful people, we have to constantly filter presentations that are made to us in the present day and refilter and relabel negative presentations that were made to us in the past. I have met people whose earliest memories of presentations were from abusive, misguided parents or other caretakers who told them, "You are stupid, ugly, and will never amount to anything." These impactful statements have to undergo reevaluation and reprogramming if those people are going to reach their full potential. We must always be mindful of the fact that our words and presentations have an impact, particularly on young children who are very impressionable. As an adult, if someone approaches me today and declares, "You are stupid, ugly, and will never amount to anything," I have evidence I can use to reason through, evaluate, and dismiss their comments. But these words delivered to a child in a presentation can be disastrous, as they often have no experience or worldview that can allow them to diminish or dismiss a harmful message. I am blessed to have been impacted by many powerful messages from great presenters throughout my formative years. Recently, I was watching the Grammy Award show. It was fascinating to hear the acceptance speeches by the world's greatest musical artists. I was struck by the fact that many of them credited their earliest musical influences to singing or hearing music sung in a church. Many of us experienced our earliest formal presentations in a church service. Whether the service was inspiring, exhilarating, or boring, it's likely those memories remain with us to this day and influence how we feel about church services. I remember sitting in a church service and having my first thoughts of being a public speaker myself. When I was 10 or 11 years old, my parents joined a new church. It was one of the huge downtown congregations whose service was televised each week. Possibly because my younger brother and I could have tended to be a bit noisy and disruptive, my parents chose to sit in the balcony along the side of the sanctuary. My seat became the last seat in the row, so I was looking at the profile of the minister as he stood at the podium to speak. From this vantage point, I could watch the minister speak to the congregation, and I could experience their reactions. I could see the notes he had on the podium in front of him, and could observe the time clock and the red and green TV lights that he used to make sure he finished his message on time. My pastor for the next 4 or 5 years was one of the most gifted presenters I have ever heard. I was struck by the fact that he was speaking to a group of people live and delivering a message to a television as well as a radio audience at the same time. Delivering presentations to these various audiences required different skill sets and methods, but somehow, week after week, he was able to impactfully communicate with each of the audiences. I found myself visiting the church's library every Sunday morning before the service because I knew the pastor would be in there going over his notes or checking a few last-minute references before his Sunday morning message. We struck up a regular weekly dialogue about his previous week's message as well as the one he was planning later that same morning. Without my knowing it, this constituted my early education in public speaking and the art of presentation. We remained good friends even after he retired, and I called on him many times to discuss various speeches or his thoughts on how best to present a concept. He passed away several years later, but I remain a product of his presenting skills and his willingness to mentor a boy, a young man, and eventually a professional speaker. Virtually all of us were positively or negatively impacted by presentations made in school. It is likely that we formed our impressions of and preference for history, math, literature, and many other fields of study from our earliest days in school and the way those subjects were presented to us. Because of the success of my novel, The Ultimate Gift, and the movie based on it, along with the sequel books and movies, I have the privilege of speaking at many schools, both in person and via satellite. Through this process, I have met many teachers and countless students. I am amazed that some teachers can make any topic tedious or boring, while other teachers create magic, mystery, and excitement around the same topic. I have been in history classes where they were studying World War II. I have heard teachers droning on ad nauseum as bored and distracted students struggled to stay awake. Throughout recorded history, there are few chapters of human endeavor that have ever offered as much excitement, power, and passion as the study of World War II. Countless books, movies, and television programs continue to document the colorful and world-changing war years. I am baffled as to how a teacher of history can present World War II in a way that it becomes boring. I have been in English literature classrooms where hormonally charged teenagers are being lectured about Romeo and Juliet, but the presentation is so convoluted and watered down that the passion of Shakespeare's message is lost in the impotent presentation. On the other hand, there are teachers of literature who continue to light the fires of passion in their students for the written word. These teachers take the same material that some of their weaker colleagues have access to, but they masterfully present their subject in such a way that their presentations resonate for decades after their students have graduated. For more than 20 years at this writing, I have written a weekly syndicated column read by millions of people around the world via newspapers, magazines, and online publications. And as many as 30 of my previous books have become international bestsellers, I remain acutely aware that many, if not most, of my readers live outside the United States. We Americans must always remember that our presentations may be local in scope, but international in impact. In an ever-increasing way, our audiences are from different countries, cultures, and backgrounds. Here in America, our leaders are selected through a somewhat complex and convoluted political process. Politicians are elected by running successful campaigns. A campaign is nothing more or less than a presentation that goes on for many months. While there are countless hours of speeches and endless sound bites, political careers have been made or lost on the turn of one impactful phrase that sticks in the minds and consciousness of the public. Political historians can point to the very speeches that gave rise to the political careers of such world leaders as John F. Kennedy, Ronald Reagan, or Bill Clinton. On the other hand, a single poor political presentation can arguably account for the downfall of the public careers of Vice President Dan Quayle, Governor Rick Perry, Senator Howard Dean, and many others. My late great friend and mentor, legendary coach John Wooden, was fond of telling his players, "You will be known for a lifetime of good deeds or one momentary lapse of judgment." This is true in life and the realm of presenting. The days of saying something good or bad and having it fade into memory are gone. With the rise of digital technology, everything we say and do, especially our formal presentations, are a part of an ongoing, irrevocable historical record. We know more about the world around us than any previous generation. The media bombards us with presentations, but we must be careful to filter each of these presentations for accuracy, bias, and perspective. My late great friend and mentor Paul Harvey became among the most influential figures of several generations as he delivered a daily presentation via his radio broadcast known as Paul Harvey News and Comment. I came to know Paul Harvey later as an author and professional speaker. He was as influential in those areas as he was in the field of newscasting. Mr. Harvey always stressed to me and many others the importance of separating news from commentary. In the presentations that many of us make, we deliver facts, then offer opinions or conclusions. Opinions and conclusions are valid parts of a presentation, but they must be properly labeled. Too many presentations come to us delivering opinions labeled as facts. We must always respect our audience and anyone to whom we present enough to differentiate between our opinions and the absolute facts. Before Paul Harvey impacted the world with his news and commentary, an entertaining cowboy from my home state of Oklahoma named Will Rogers touched the whole world with his wit and wisdom. Will Rogers was able to tackle some of the most difficult topics of the day in his radio broadcasts and daily columns, using sarcasm and humor. Any great presentation will have some serious, poignant, emotional moments punctuated by humor. Humor is not just an entertaining interlude, but is an irreplaceable tool of a powerful presentation. Too many emotional moments piled upon one another will leave your audience drained. A brief laugh or comical anecdote can refresh your audience's palate for the next flavorful part of your presentation. As Will Rogers taught us, the line between the facts, the fantasy, and the humor can be blurred in several ways. A presentation can be received by many people in many ways on many levels. I am pleased that at this writing, 7 of my books have been turned into major motion pictures. In a movie, the story I created in my book is reworked to make an entirely new presentation utilizing the same message. I am pleased that in each of the films based on my novels, the audiences range from kindergartners to great-grandparents. The plots, topics, and subject matters remain relevant and interesting to everyone. This is a tribute to some very talented colleagues who have collaborated with me on these movie projects. Any presentation needs to be tailored to the audience. A kindergarten teacher or the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court can each make a presentation about truth and honesty, but it will be structured in different ways to reach their individual audiences. All of us have had the experience of receiving a message in a powerful presentation, then reflecting upon past presentations that can now be viewed in a different light. The wisdom that tells us when the pupil is ready, the teacher arrives, is a product of powerful presentations. I have had great mentors throughout my life and career. Many of them have shared impactful messages with me that seemed complete in the moment. But years later, with the benefit of experiences and hindsight, those messages from my mentors can take on an even deeper meaning. We have all reread a book or watched a movie multiple times and found new meaning that we somehow overlooked on previous occasions. A great presentation stays with the audience and can broaden and deepen as the audience's perspective grows and enables them to connect with more of the message than they could internalize initially. I have had the distinct privilege of knowing several of the great speakers and presenters of our generation. I first knew them as part of their audience through reading their books or listening to their speeches. Then, years later, I had the honor of sharing the stage with many of these luminaries. I have always considered my late great friend, mentor, and colleague, Zig Ziglar, as the dean of public speakers. Backstage at many of the huge arena events, speakers who are waiting their turn on stage are often found reviewing their notes, talking on the phone, or chatting with one another. But when Zig took the stage, all the other speakers could be found standing in the wings, watching the master work. Many of us could repeat Zig's stories word for word. They became such a part of our industry and our lives. Zig Ziglar had a way of talking with his audience instead of talking to them or at them. He seemed to somehow ask them to consider what he was looking at as he observed the life around us and the possibilities for the future. Zig's stories created visual images as powerful as great movies. Our culture has been shaped by the images from impactful motion pictures. A brief mention of film titles such as Rocky, On Golden Pond, Caddyshack, E.T., or Star Wars will elicit verbatim lines of dialogue from those movies experienced decades ago. Great presenters and presentations create visual images and mental sound bites that endure. Readers who have enjoyed any of my books, including this one, owe a great debt of gratitude to Dr. Dennis Waitley as much or more than to me. Like millions of people around the world, I became familiar with Dr. Dennis Waitley through his book and presentation entitled The Psychology of Winning. Dennis came into my life at a time when I was losing my sight and learning to deal with the world as a blind person. I, as the pupil, was ready at the point when Dennis Waitley, the teacher, arrived. There was a memorable point in each of Dennis Waitley's presentations when he recited his poem entitled, "If You Think You Can, You Can." Those words stayed with me and countless people among Dennis's myriad of audience members throughout the years. As a new fledgling speaker myself on tour with Dennis and the legendary Dr. Robert Schuller, I was confronted by both of those giants about writing a book. This was something that had never crossed my mind, but great presenters introduce great possibilities, and before I knew it, I had written my first book. Dennis Waitley wrote the foreword to my initial book entitled You Don't Have to Be Blind to See, and Dr. Schuller opened the door with his publisher Thomas Nelson, which brought that project to life. 30 years after the initial encounter with Dennis Waitley, he attended one of my speeches. The promoters of the event had alerted me that Dr. Waitley was in the audience, but he had asked if he could simply sit and watch and stay out of the limelight. This was simply not possible for me to do, as I was standing on a stage that he had made a reality in my life. I knew that evening that he had just celebrated his 80th birthday, and I called him to the stage so I could pay tribute to him. Without thinking it through, I asked him in front of the entire audience if he could present his epic poem, If You Think You Can, You Can. It suddenly dawned on me that Dr. Waitley had not included that poem in his presentation for many years, but as any world-class presenter would do, Dr. Waitley recited that impactful poem word for word and indelibly influenced my audience and a whole new generation of people with the power of his presentation. Think about all the great presentations that have impacted you throughout your life. Review the messages that you took away from those presentations and consider what valuable wisdom may still be waiting for your enlightened mind to grasp. Great presentations are crafted for a lifetime, not simply for the point of the presentation. Great words, messages, thoughts, ideas, and concepts resonate throughout history and are simply waiting to be rediscovered and reflected upon from a new angle of perspective. Whether you're crafting a presentation or reviewing one, realize that the wisdom lies beneath the layers of the proverbial onion that you can peel back in days and years to come. When we fully understand this ongoing power of presentation, we become more diligent about the way we experience the presentation and the way we deliver a presentation.